If you've watched our video on why millennials might not benefit from a buy and hold strategy the way our parents and grandparents did, you know that our generation faces different struggles than those who came before us. The economic landscape has changed dramatically, and assuming a buy and hold strategy that will perform as it did in the last 100 years, as it will in the next, is just silly. One counter argument I often hear is that technology has the ability to create infinite scale. People like Raoul Pal and Cathie Wood are at the forefront of this idea that innovation, particularly in areas like AI, robotics, and biotech, can create endless growth. Before I dive into some issues with this argument, let me make one thing clear. I have no problem with either of them. I enjoy their work and find interest in their insights. Nassim Taleb, in his book Skin in the Game, discusses the importance of vested interests. He argues that people often make predictions based on what benefits them personally. Take Cathie Wood, for example. Her business is heavily tied to tech stocks, so it makes sense that she would promote the idea of tech-driven growth. This doesn't mean she's wrong, but it's crucial to recognize the bias behind her predictions. Let's dive deeper into what they stand to gain if their predictions turn out to be true. Cathie Wood's funds are focused on tech, so naturally, it benefits her if more people buy into the tech growth narrative. Raoul Pal is in a similar position. He frequently advocates for investing in innovation, predicting that it will yield massive returns. No surprise then that both of them push a bullish tech narrative. It's essential to their business models. Now, what do I stand to gain? Views. Plain and simple. My investments don't change based on whether you decide to buy, sell, or hold tech stocks. So, as we dig into these ideas, keep that in mind and try to consider them from a broader perspective. Here's the claim. Tech and AI will allow us to overcome labor shortages and declining populations by increasing productivity. Sounds great, right? But let's break it down. Historically, innovation tends to stall when populations shrink. The idea is that tech and AI can overcome this, allowing us to keep growing even as the labor force shrinks. But this isn't entirely true, and it doesn't apply to every industry. Sure, it works for some sectors like customer service or data entry, but in fields like plumbing, construction, and healthcare, the situation is different. These industries require hands-on labor and problem solving that AI and robots aren't ready to handle on a large scale. Let me give you an example. Imagine you wake up to find that sewage is backing up into your basement. That's not something a chatbot can fix. In this case, we'd need fully autonomous robots capable of handling the job, and those aren't in production yet. To develop that kind of tech takes enormous resources, and even when it's created, maintaining it comes with high costs. And who ends up paying for that? Historically, these costs get passed on to the consumer, which would make everyday services more expensive over time instead of cheaper. Let's get into some of the challenges that Cathie Wood's vision of tech-driven growth seemed to leave out. First, there's regulation and ethics. Take AI and genomics. Both industries are heavily regulated, and rolling out new AI tools or gene editing technologies involves not just technical barriers, but ethical debates too. These factors would slow down the adoption of innovations that would otherwise drive exponential growth. Second, there's the issue of physical limitations. While software can scale rapidly, many industries can't rely on software alone in fields like agriculture, infrastructure, and utilities. Scaling innovation requires physical labor, not just digital platforms. This is why industries like healthcare and utilities haven't been disrupted the same way tech has. Third, we have to think about demographics. Wood's view tends to assume that demand for tech will keep growing, but aging populations in developed countries might limit this growth. As people age, they tend to spend less on consumer tech, which would hurt the demand for gadgets and new technologies. First, there's job discrepancies. Automation would increase productivity in certain sectors, but it won't help as much in low skill or hands-on jobs. This leads to job discrepancies, where low skill jobs disappear and are taken over by AI. This would create a decrease in jobs, where some sectors thrive while others are left behind, which would limit overall economic growth. Second, there's the cost and maintenance of automation. High levels of automation come with massive upfront costs, and maintaining robots or AI systems is expensive. Companies historically pass those costs on to consumers, which would lead to higher prices for essential services rather than lower prices. Third, many jobs take place in complex, unpredictable environments. AI works well today in controlled environments like factories, but in fields like plumbing, electrical work, and healthcare, you're dealing with unique situations that require human judgment and adaptability. Until we have robots that can handle these complexities, automation won't solve all our problems. Cathie Wood's entire strategy is based on the belief that tech will continue to outperform other sectors long term. But as Nassim highlights, look at their invested interest. Tech has been on a massive growth streak for over 2 decades, but each sector tends to go through cycles and eventually growth slows. So first, there's the concept of mean reversion. No sector dominates forever. Just as energy and industrials had their time, tech will eventually hit a point where growth stabilizes and valuations adjust to more realistic levels. Second, innovation is cyclical. Every growth phase in history has its limits. The tech boom could eventually reach a saturation point where its growth slows down. When that happens, we'll likely see lower returns, just like we did after the dot-com boom. Third, tech depends heavily on consumer spending. If the economy weakens, people tend to cut back on buying new gadgets or services, which would hurt tech companies. When consumer spending dips, it's usually tech that feels the pain first. If you're thinking about long-term investing, as the S&P 500 offers a more balanced approach, the NASDAQ 100 might deliver higher returns during a tech boom, but with it comes greater risk. When tech takes a hit, the NASDAQ can see bigger losses, and that volatility isn't for everyone. In conclusion, while tech is certainly a valuable sector, it is often romanticized to be something it's not, which is why I encourage everyone to do their own research and make decisions for themselves. This video idea actually came from a comment, and because the viewer was respectful and kind, I felt compelled to dig a little deeper myself. So if you have ideas or information you want to share, comment below. Until then, signing off.